Thank you very much. We're going to be talking about higher states of consciousness, a breakthrough in human potential which will have an extraordinary impact on civilization. To understand higher states of consciousness, we need to understand consciousness. And to understand consciousness, we need to understand a little bit about the nature of reality as brought to us by modern objective science. So this will be a summary of 300 years of scientific research on a single slide, the moral of which is very simple, that the universe is fundamentally unified, superficially diverse, superficially complex, but fundamentally simple. And this history of probing deeper and deeper levels of reality started in physics, of course, with classical mechanics, the physics of the day-to-day sensory world. It led on at the beginning of the last century to the quantum mechanics of atoms and molecules, and then quantum field theory of the elementary particles and forces of nature, and ultimately to unified field theories based on the superstring. These theories fulfill Einstein's lifelong dream to discover the unified source of the diversified universe, the single fountainhead of all the laws of nature that uphold life at every level of the physical universe. To get a feeling for superstring theory or unified field theory, picture an ocean of pure existence, an ocean of intelligence, pure being, which is silent at its core, but is dynamic on the surface, that is filled with dynamism, reverberating within itself and erupting in a sea of effervescent bubbles, like ginger ale effervesces bubbles. Now, it may not surprise you to learn that these fundamental bubbles of the universe are not ginger ale, actually, but are so-called superstrings, infinitesimal elastic loops, like little rubber bands. And like little rubber bands, superstrings can vibrate in certain ways. They're the left-moving, right-moving, longitudinal, axial, different vibrational states, each with its own vibrational frequency. And different frequencies mean different energies. Different energies mean different masses. So all of these vibrating strings, this way, that way, the other way, are strings of different mass, different electric charge, different properties. And now we know, and this is the amazing thing about superstring theory, that depending upon how that string is vibrating, that string will behave exactly as a photon of light, a particle of gravity, a lepton, a quark, a Higgs boson. And that's the remarkable thing. We have one simple, unified, universal field in different vibrational tones. And these different vibrational frequencies are the building blocks of the universe. The whole universe is nothing but that. So think of a single entity vibrating in different tones. And those different frequencies correspond to the 5 spin types and ultimately to everything in the universe. So this body is nothing but the fluctuations or vibrations of this universal ocean of being. This mind is nothing but the vibrations of universal being. You are nothing but the vibrations of the same universal ocean of intelligence. End of physics. What is, from this modern perspective, meditation? Well, meditation, classically understood and properly practiced, is a technique to take our outwardly directed attention through the senses powerfully within to experience and explore deeper levels of mind, quieter and quieter levels of the thinking process. As this chart shows, the inward flow of the attention to explore deeper and deeper levels of human intelligence that correspond to deeper levels of intelligence in nature. And in the meditative state, we slip beyond the quietest level of active thinking to experience that which is beyond thought, pure being, unbounded universal consciousness, in which human mind expands to experience universal mind, the unified field. That is the meditative state. We can see that process, the awareness flowing within, and in a few minutes or a few lifetimes, depending upon the efficiency of the technique that is used, the awareness culminates in that experience of unbounded awareness. And the Yoga Sutras which the classic text of yoga explains that yoga, the experience of unity, is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. Then, it says, the seer is established in the self, pure consciousness. This is a fourth state of consciousness, the meditative state, classically called samadhi, pure consciousness. The Upanishads say the peaceful, the blissful, the undivided is thought to be the fourth. That is the self. That is to be known. Pioneering researcher Robert Keith Wallace and colleagues 4 decades ago discovered this physiologically and coined this meditative state, or samadhi, a hypometabolic physiological state, which is basically a way of saying a state of deep rest. And that's important. Talk about a few practical benefits of the fourth state of consciousness. It means not the first, second, or third, not waking, dreaming, sleeping, but a fourth state of human awareness, pure consciousness, samadhi. Well, it provides much deeper rest and relaxation than ordinary rest. And that has a very powerful effect at dissolving stress. As many meta-analyses and hundreds of studies have now shown, transcending is a state of deeper rest and provides more effective relief of stress and anxiety than normal relaxation or stress reduction programs, or even what is conventionally called meditation. Now, most disease is caused or complicated by stress. If we look at heart disease for a moment, or its number one risk factor, high blood pressure is normalized very effectively and very quickly through transcending the meditative state. And other risk factors, transcending clears clogged arteries by supercharging the immune system and allowing the body the freedom in that state of deep rest to go about repair and removal of abnormalities and impurities. And the bottom line when it comes to heart disease is reduced heart attack, stroke, or death. And it's very remarkable, as we've seen. A recent study, which is a culmination of many studies, 9-year longitudinal study funded by the National Institutes of Health, where Dr. Robert Schneider and others showed marked reductions in heart disease, stroke, and death, heart attack, stroke, and death, in the meditating group in comparison to controls, especially those who were actually meditating regularly. That was an important component of the success of the study. This made news around and around the world, as it should, because heart disease is the world's #1 killer, and it can be reversed and improved and prevented in such an easy way. We're more interested today in higher states of consciousness that have more to do with the functioning of the brain. This is Dr. Fred Travis, who's done some of the most important research in the world on higher states of consciousness in the neurophysiology of enlightenment. In the state of samadhi, the whole brain functions in an integrated way with high amplitude alpha waves across the brain in a high state of integration or correlation. That in itself, for a brain scientist, is really extraordinary. You certainly don't see the entire brain engaged and integrated in waking, dreaming, sleeping, or a drug-induced state, or hypnosis, or anything. It is unique to samadhi. Looking at the same thing from a different perspective, this chart shows the degree to which the brain is talking to itself, communicating with itself, functioning in an integrated way. The individual on the left is sitting in a relaxed, eyes closed state. The person on the right is actually the same person, 3 months later, having learned to meditate, experiencing pure consciousness, where the whole brain is functioning in a completely integrated way. Again, fascinating, but what good is it? It's a lot of good, because everything good about the brain depends on its orderly functioning. Rising intelligence, IQ, improved memory and learning ability, and academic performance and executive performance, creativity, alertness, moral reasoning, psychological stability, emotional maturity. Everything good about the brain depends on its orderly functioning. And now orderly brain functioning can be systematically increased in anyone, it seems, at any age. So if you look at the different measures of intelligence that are in vogue, that are often used in educational research, all of them improve very significantly, even in adults, at an age where your intelligence is not supposed to change or certainly not supposed to improve. In the absence of a technique to dissolve stress at will, which is what samadhi is, it's the most profoundly blissful, restful state, we are living in a society of accumulating stress, pervasive stress, and stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, which is the CEO of the brain. The smarty pants is the technical term we've recently heard, of the brain. It sits over the primitive brain and it exerts executive control. It's our rational filter against primitive, impulsive, aggressive, violent behavior. So when stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex, and chronic stress shuts it down chronically, then it simply fails to be used and fails to develop properly, and we are stuck, basically, in a pre-adolescent society. If you have any doubts about whether we live in a pre-adolescent society, look around. One area where stress is rampant and the negative effects of stress on brain functioning is obvious is in the criminal justice system. And if you look at maximum security prisons, and there are dozens of studies that have been published on this phenomenon now, you find that introducing the experience of the transcendent, even among maximum security felons, brings about a restoration of balance, a restoration of blood flow to the whole brain, engaging the prefrontal cortex, transcending does, but it also integrates it with the rest of the brain, strengthening those connections so that we regain, in a sense, control over ourselves. Bottom line, people don't go back to prison. Now, what about stress in its most intense and acute form, like post-traumatic stress? This has become a modern epidemic. Our returning veterans, more soldiers today die from suicide than in combat. Post-traumatic stress is a result of overwhelming stressful experience, at which point the fear center of the brain, the amygdala, can get stuck on hyperdrive. And as long as the fear center of the brain is on hyper alert, then we're in a state of hypervigilance, insomnia, basically a state of fight or flight. What is really remarkable is how quickly the experience of the transcendent can normalize brain functioning, can unstick the stuck amygdala. Even one transcending, one meditation in a significant percentage of subjects is enough to provide a blast of rest deeper than sleep and to unstick that stuck amygdala, and you see the cooling influence of meditation and restoring blood flow to the prefrontal cortex and balanced brain function. Really remarkable, as a result of which now the DoD, now the Veterans Administration, now military academies in the US and abroad, and an increasing number of militaries are incorporating transcendental meditation into military training. The other epidemic, which is very important to educators such as myself and many of you here, is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There are millions of children medicated for this, whether in fact they need it or not, whether in fact the medications are of benefit or not. Now we understand that ADHD is a stress-related learning disorder. It has to do with the slow development of the prefrontal cortex, which is the controller of our attention, and that in turn is due to stress. Introducing transcending to children with ADHD in a very short period of time, a matter of weeks, can restore balanced brain functioning and coherent brain functioning and markedly reduce the symptoms of ADHD. As a result of that, in my opinion, a miracle has happened. And the miracle is, in the public schools of the United States and in many countries throughout the world now, well over 1 million students in 400 schools have incorporated transcending into the curriculum. And the results, the transformation of the schools in terms of graduation rates and violence and absenteeism and scholastic performance, are truly remarkable. This is a trend that is growing so fast we cannot even meet the demand. It is a very, very good sign for the future of our world. We've mentioned some of the applications of the fourth state of consciousness, a higher state of consciousness, to different areas, different problems of society. Let's recap now by looking at the structure of the fourth state of consciousness. And it really couldn't be simpler. In the fourth state of consciousness, all cognitive processing, all sensory processing, all emotional activity has been transcended. Consciousness is left wide awake, on its own, within its own nature, pure abstraction, unbounded awareness, pure inner wakefulness. And the benefits of that, of contact with that state, are profound, as we have seen. You would not call this a state of enlightenment, because it is a momentary instant of complete withdrawal from the world. You're not going to get that raise if you are there in the meditative state. That is described in the literature as the fourth state, fourth condition, is Atman, the self, in his own pure state, the awakened life of supreme consciousness. But life doesn't end with samadhi. Life really begins with samadhi, and even literally so, because for most people that is their first experience of the field of pure life. Beyond the fourth, and one of the great benefits of the fourth, is that it leads to the fifth. This state is traditionally called enlightenment, and we can define it very simply as the integrated functioning of the entire brain stabilized, so that not just during meditation, but in the midst of dynamic activity, inner unbounded awareness, inner silence, and global EEG coherence is lived in active life. I want to show that. The Yoga Sutras prescribe this. Yoga becomes a well-founded state, an established state, when it has been respectfully and uninterruptedly cultivated for a long time. Let's look at the research on this. If we look at what's going on in the brain during the fourth state, during transcendental meditation, we see, for example, on the left, somebody who's a relatively new meditator experiencing pure consciousness. On the right, we see an 8-year twice-daily meditator experiencing pure consciousness. It looks the same. The fourth state is the fourth state, whether you've experienced it several times or several thousand times. The difference is in activity. Coming out of meditation and engaging in action, the newer meditator on the left, the orderliness, the coherence, the high amplitude alpha that extends from the back to the front of the brain is gone. But on the right, the longer term meditator engaged in action, that high amplitude alpha and the orderliness of brain functioning survives and is there, which means we're using the full resource of the entire brain. That orderliness and clarity and coherence is always with us, even under threats and siege. So this is the stabilization of total brain functioning. And remember, coherent brain functioning is a good thing. And then it's described, for example, as self-realization. Well, that's no mystery. The self, after all, is our consciousness, that which sees, that deep within which knows. It's not this mind, it's not this body, constantly changing, generally for the worse. It is the seer within, the knower within. And so self-realization could be a fleeting thing in the fourth state of consciousness, but is permanent awareness in the fifth state of consciousness. 24-hour bliss, because bliss is the nature of that maximally expanded self. And then there's a Buddhist term, highfalutin, liberation. What does that mean? Well, let's look at the structure of the fifth state of consciousness. In the fifth state of consciousness, we have the permanent experience of the transcendent self, our pure inner nature, inner wakefulness, unbounded awareness, bliss consciousness 24 hours a day, whether sleeping, dreaming, wake, under surgery. Once that light goes on, you can never extinguish it. And it is always there as a silent support to all the outer activity, which has no longer been transcended. It's back. We are engaged. We have all of our concrete thinking, cognitive processing, and it's all going better than ever before. More smooth, more graceful, more effective. But it's the two, the 100% outer life and 100% inner life, that is the great gift of the fifth state of consciousness, enlightenment. So here are a couple of quotes from the ancient literature. He is in his own being, pure, never changing, never moving, unpollutable, and in peace beyond desires, he watches the drama of the universe. Or even though fully engaged in action, he does not act at all. Established in the self, one overcomes sorrows and suffering. And then finally, there is a side benefit of enlightenment, many side benefits of enlightenment, but I have to hit on just one. It seems in every generation there is a concept that we have, by virtue of the power of our own thoughts, the ability to achieve great things. Now, of course, with meditation and development of consciousness, when we have more energy, more IQ, and we live longer, we expect to accomplish more in life. But this is something different. This is the experience of very successful people where things just seem to go their way, and their desires seem to be fulfilled rather easily. This is, in our generation, the theme of a book called The Secret. Before that, Power of Positive Thinking. Before that, with a mustard seed of faith, you could move mountains. So it's a theme that's with us throughout time, but the problem with The Secret is that it doesn't work very well for most people. Some perhaps, but not very well for most people. But there's a secret behind The Secret, and the secret behind The Secret is there are, as we have seen, different levels of the mind, different levels of thought, from active, outward, scattered mind, surface thought, to deeper and deeper levels of thought. And we traverse those deeper levels of thought in the inward flow during meditation. Now, these deeper levels of thought are more powerful for the same reason that deeper levels of nature are more powerful. Nuclear power is 1,000,000 times more powerful than chemical energy because manipulating the nucleus is a manipulation on a scale that is 1,000,000 times smaller than the manipulation of molecules. And the deeper you go, proportionally, the more powerful nature becomes. Well, this correlation between deeper levels of thought and deeper levels of nature is rigorous today. We can identify the different levels of awareness or levels of thought, from surface, vicary, concrete thought to abstract conceptual thought, the world of the mathematician, to fine, fine feeling level, the world of the fine, fine artist, and then beyond that even is being, pure, universal consciousness. So these levels of mind correlate rigorously to different levels of physical reality, the classical world, the quantum mechanical world, quantum field theoretic world, and the unified field. So the way to strengthen thought is to take the awareness within to explore and become conversant and proficient and fluent with deeper, more powerful levels of thought, and ultimately to learn to project thought from the level of being. At that level, with a mustard seed of thought, and mustard seed is important. It means the tiniest impulse of thought on the most rarefied level, there you can move mountains. That is the secret behind The Secret. Transcend. So, I'd like to conclude that transcending, classically, meditation, is for enlightenment. Yes, it prevents disease. It promotes health and longevity. And yes, it promotes balanced brain functioning and can reverse PTSD and ADHD and cope with anxiety and depression. It develops the prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, and with it increases IQ and creativity and moral reasoning. It promotes in schools academic achievement and in businesses executive performance. But really, fundamentally, for whatever reason you learn it, transcending brings fulfillment in higher states of consciousness. That's total brain functioning, self-realization, liberation, and beyond. Thank you.